All right, so what we're going to do now is going to use an arch that we have established already, and use this curvature for our. We're going to build our vaulted ceiling with this. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use this basically to trace. We're going to build, most of the work is going to be off of the actual line object. So I'll start off with a basic line, and I'll just click and click and click. I'm going to turn off the rendering for right now, but we will use that in 1 second. Alright, so there's my spline. Go here real quick. I'm going to make this edge right here a Bezier, or this point a Bezier, excuse me. And just get that, match that spline as much as possible. I want to make that a Bezier as well, so that I can actually make this edge right here 90 degrees. It'll help out. I'm going to clean up this bottom edge in a little bit. Make that a Bezier so I can get this top arch just the way I want it. Alright, so got the arch. So now we're going to use this as a box. No, we're not going to use a box. Excuse me. We're going to actually use the rendering tool in this line and add modifiers. What we're going to use is the rectangular option in the line. And so this establishes an actual arch for us. Essentially what we're going to do in eventual steps is extrude out one set of edges, and then we're going to plop in our symmetry tool to allow us to get the corner that we need. Excuse me. So I go to edit poly. I'm going to delete these top caps, and the reason why I want to do that is that when I select the ring or edge loops of my polygons, holding shift key while just hovering over the adjacent polygon, when I select those, it will not carry the selection across the entire object, just through the part that I'm after. So I can hit extrude and just get the basic edge going. And we're going to use the symmetry tool to create the arch. Now the symmetry tool was created at the pivot point of my base object, which is the center of the spline. So did I do 45 degrees? I want to do 45 degrees. Right there. So actually, let's go ahead and redo that real quick. I'm going to move my pivot point of my line down to the bottom of my object by going to the alien, which is basically hierarchy, affect pivot only. Put it on this side. Now I add the symmetry, put the symmetry right there at the bottom, and that's going to be a lot easier to deal with. Go to the sub-object level of 1 and rotate it 45 degrees, and now we can move it in position. Whoopsie, let's get that corner established. Alright. Now I did the extrusion on the other direction, so if we wanted to flip that, we can, and just rotate it back to the other side of 45. Get that corner. In showing you both directions of the flip, you kind of get an idea that this button is there. A lot of students do tend to forget this thing exists. Now that I have this established, I got my basic vaulted ceiling. There's some things I can think about, like reducing the poly count. Won't probably see the back side of these objects too much, so I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of those. Delete that face, delete that face. Select those, delete those. So now I've got that reduced down. If I want, I could do the UVs at this point. It's probably going to be a little easier to get it established because that's a pretty straightforward shape in terms of how an object can get, how the UVs will be projected. And I probably will be throwing another UV on here. So there's the shape. Go to flatten. Let's drop that down there. So we'll probably want to flatten these arches up, which is the actual outer edges. Select those, align, Select those and align. Slide up and scale down. This won't be perfect, but you'll have most of the distortion taken care of using this route. I'll go ahead and go to low, and we'll do that. Repeating the process, this time scaling up. Select by object, and I can rotate 90. This one of these edges has probably got cut out by the symmetry tool, but let's just go ahead and get him. Let's get the unwrap engaged a little bit, so it just gets us prepared. There'll be some alignment that has to be taken care of for sure, probably rotation, but let's just see what happens. Because discovery is fun. Close that. Symmetry's there. Now let's double check our unwrap now on the actual more completed model. So there's our model. Let's go ahead and see what happens when we stack it up. Okay. So we've got some areas we can weld. Stitch selected. Stitch selected. There's really no efficient way for the UVs on this, so what I try to do is think about how I can line up my pieces. Using the mirror tool, kind of set this up right next to each other. That'll help me line this up. Probably going to scale everything down so everything sticks inside the 1-1 space. Like I said, there's not really many efficient ways of actually pulling an arch in here. We'd break it up and then scale each piece up to fit in the 1-1 space. But since we are not painting in Substance or ZBrush or Mudbox in this particular class, this will be a sufficient solution for this object. So that's how we can build a quick and easy and dirty. So collapse 2, and there's our vaulted ceiling. So we've got 90, make an instance. There's some alignment tool. Hey, look at that. We'll have to do some cleanup, that's for sure. It's an instance, so let's go ahead and go here. Oh, I didn't get the whole UV. I didn't get the. Oh, my symmetry's messed up.
You knocked out a couple faces on the bottom.
Oh, I did. Okay. So real quick, what I did was I fixed the actual organization of the rotation of the symmetry, and I had to go back and weld some things. What I want to suggest now is, like, if you've got an area where you're not sure some vertices are welded, so what I'm going to do here is I should be able to break those off. I should have broken it into 1 or 2 verts. Okay, so there's several verts right there. So let's say that I did a complex modeling procedure like I did here, and I used symmetry and a modifier and a modifier and a modifier and whatever. And I'm not sure that all my vertices are welded the way they need to be welded. I go to my border, because it'll select all the holes, and I go here, and now I can see where all my holes are at. So these are areas where my vertices aren't completely welded. So I can convert that selection to vertices by holding Control and clicking on the vertex icon. I can bring up the weld window and just clean this up a little bit. So right now it's 105, and then I weld it to 96, so I'll hit OK because I like that. Go back to border and double click and double check and see where I've got some issues. I've got some faces I need to rebuild, but that's okay, that's no problem. Start with this one. And because I'm rebuilding these faces, I probably have to double check the UVs as well, so just be wary of that. I have these little pieces in here. Target weld here, so let's just go drop to that. It's a little distortion in that corner. I'm not going to be too worried about it. It's fallout. Ship it, right? All right, so there's that. Let's double check our UVs now. So let's pack it in and see what happens. All right, same scenario we were earlier, but this time things look a little cleaner. So I would imagine, let's see. Stitch selected, select my hole. Flip. Slide over. There's going to be some UV work I have to do to get where I created those shapes in here, but I can work on that in a little bit. What I want to test out now, before I collapse my stack again and see where I want to see where my issues are. So yeah, 90. And I make an instance and let's do that. That's cleaner. Yay, I'm happy. I am artist. 180. And there's our vaulted arch. All right, so starting with an arch, use that, create a shape, then extrude it out, get your symmetry correct, make sure you do 90 degrees or 45 degrees, not 33 or 22 or whatever it was that I did, and then just go from clean up from there. This little overlap right here is not a problem because it does give you a seam, because if you do want to have some separation, like you want to break some things apart, it starts to give you an idea where you can go with it. You can also cover it up with another arch, because that's the arch that actually fits in the hallway. That's the actual, this side arch, this 90-degree angle is the arch space. So you can put an arch right on top of that and not have to build that detail. As an example, okay, so what I was saying is that this is the actual arch. $180. You can use that arch to decorate your arch, your vaulted ceiling, which is the actual intended use of it. It's a little off, but your curve will be a little tighter when you can have it, you know, you can work your curve a little bit better. And there's some other tools in here that you can manipulate to kind of get that shape just a little tighter. It's also just a couple of verts anyway. But that's the idea, all right? That's your vaulted ceiling.